Hey, longevity junkie, it's time to get your fix. I'm Nikki Leigh.
I'm Buck Joffrey.
And today we talk to Dr. Dave Rabin, a psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and entrepreneur about his pioneering work bridging mental health, psychedelic science, and wearable technology. Also, a new study of over 47,000 women found links between coffee drinking and healthy aging. But
think I
first,
need
we
some
always
coffee.
catch up. I know. Buck and I were just talking about how we're like a little draggy right now. So
I know.
it's kind of
Need a
hilarious.
little coffee. A little coffee might do the trick. Although that
Does
sounds
coffee
smart.
really do that for you?
So it's interesting. I drink coffee once a day in the morning, and it wakes me up. However, it doesn't seem like it does anything to me the rest of the day. Like I could drink a cup of coffee and just go to bed. And
Okay.
some people just metabolize caffeine quicker. I think I'm one of those people. Anyway, it is
Yeah.
what it is. What's the
Yeah.
study about?
For sure.
Oh, wait.
Well,
Wait,
yeah.
we're catching up.
Are we?
Forget. We're
you
catching
okay?
up. I'm fine. What are you up to?
Were you just on vacation or are you going on vacation
No,
with your family?
I'm going.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
going in like
Where
a
are you
week or
going?
so. Well, that's a very good question. It was until yesterday we were going to go to New York City and be there during the 4th of July and all this stuff. And then all this, the U.S. Bombing Iran and all that stuff. All of a sudden, everybody in the family's a little bit nervous about going to New York City because,
it's a big city.
It's a big city.
And 9/11 happened.
Exactly. And
yeah.
now there's just this anxiety, and I'm going with, it's just me and my daughters. So we shifted. We're going to go to Mexico City instead because
Mexico City. I'm going to another country.
we don't think Mexico City is going to be a target.
Away. No, and it's farther away. It's not just Mexico. It's like I'm going to South America, not even Mexico.
Yeah. So that's the plan. We're going. I've been there once. Cool. Very cool
place.
It's
awesome. I love Mexico City.
Yeah, food's good. And it kind of has a little bit of a New York vibe, right? A little bit.
It is city. It's definitely a city. It's really
How about
cool.
You?
I love Mexico City. How about me? What?
Are you going anywhere? Are you coming? You don't know whether you're going or coming anytime.
Well,
so.
I know. I just got home last night really late after a lot of delays. It was absolutely bonkers. But I'm actually okay. So Jeremy Renner.
How do I know that name? I know that
Jeremy Renner is a huge actor. He, he's been in the Marvel movies.
Okay, well, it's that, yeah.
He's a huge actor. He has a show called Mayor of Kingstown.
Okay.
Anyways, he's a huge actor, and he has a. Did you ever hear of an actor that got ran over by a snowplow and got crushed on New Year's? That was Jeremy Renner. So he has a foundation. It was intense. He has a foundation for kids, and I'm flying up there at the end of this week to go volunteer at this charity.
That's nice. I thought you were going to say he has a foundation for people who's been run over by snowplows.
Oh my God. God, I hope there's not enough of those people.
Yeah.
But they will need a foundation because it was an insane accident. There's a lot of people listening that probably really
they probably know all about it. Of course, I never
extreme.
Really follow anything like that, so I have no idea what you're talking about. So
he's a friend, so I definitely heard about it when it happened, and it was. He broke like almost every bone in his body. He was crushed. Wow. It was insane. Yeah, it was really insane. But his recovery it's been really life-changing, obviously, but also just for him, he just feels like a new perspective on life, if you will.
Sure.
So
I bet.
Yeah. So it's beautiful. I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited to see all the kids. So I'll be running around with a bunch of kids at summer camp and helping out. So it'll be fun.
That's good.
Yeah. Definitely we'll have a lot more energy then.
Yeah. Well, speaking of which, let's talk about this study. Let's talk about this study.
All right, let's get into this study. Because I'm always very curious about coffee because I am so indifferent about coffee. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of studies. So I'm excited to see what we have new today. Okay, so a 30-year study of over 47,000 women from the Nurses' Health Study found that moderate caffeinated coffee intake during midlife is linked to a higher likelihood of healthy aging, defined as surviving past the age of 70 without major chronic illnesses, cognitive decline, physical disability, or mental health issues. Among the 3,700 women who met this criteria, average caffeine intake was about 315 milligrams per day, which is about roughly 3 cups of coffee. Researchers found that each additional cup of coffee per day was associated with a 2 to 5% greater chance of aging healthily, up
Hmm.
to 5 cups daily. Holy crap, really?
That's a
Wow.
lot of I
Yeah, it
mean,
is a
for me.
lot. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So, by contrast, decaffeinated coffee, tea, and soda were not associated with positive outcomes. In fact, women who drank one or more servings of soda daily were 20 to 26% less likely to age without disease or decline. Well, that makes sense with the whole sugar thing. The researchers suspect that the benefits stem from coffee's unique bioactive compounds, such as chlorogenic acids and antioxidants, which may improve glucose metabolism, reduce inflammation, and support vascular health. While the findings are observational and cannot prove causation, they suggest that caffeinated coffee, unlike other caffeinated beverages, may offer unique protective effects when consumed in moderation during midlife. Okay, well, shit, when I hit midlife, maybe I'll
Mm,
take up
there you go.
coffee.
Yeah, I mean, there's actually a lot of studies about coffee. I mean, the
There
coffee
is.
is good for you, and there's stuff about liver protection, antioxidant effects. There's also stuff with gut microbiome support because these polyphenols, these are basically prebiotic compounds that are in coffee. What's interesting though is that in other studies there have been benefits with decaf as well. So,
I've
uh,
heard that too.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a lot of those benefits are related to, you know, some of the things we've talked about here. You've got, essentially the liver stuff definitely is still positive, so it has something to do with, maybe some of the chlorogenic acids or uh, phenols, polyphenols rather. Who knows what it is? But so one of the interesting things is that like the caffeine related ones seem to be more correlated with the brain. And
Mm.
so, there's actually studies showing some correlation between decreases in depression and suicide risk. There's, protection against Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. So yeah, I mean it's interesting because it's like one of those things that I think a lot of people still are kind of on the fence. They don't know, is this good for me? Is this not good for me? And I wouldn't want to say you should drink coffee, but I think there's an abundance of evidence that if you like coffee, go to it. Just don't add a bunch of sugar to it and stuff like that. We're really talking about the black coffee.
Also, though, okay, so one of the things that's always kept me from coffee is that I'm well aware of the mold that most coffee has. Because yeah, like most coffee literally has a bunch of mold in it. And I don't know, I feel like I keep hearing more and more cases of, people either having heavy metals or having mold toxicity or all these things where I have researched that coffee is the one that contains most of that. So I went really hardcore because my dad he actually drinks decaf all day, which is really interesting. He can't, he's the one that cannot take caffeinated after like, let's say 11 a.m. or something. And I would get really nervous about that. So I went and like got him an entire new like coffee machine. I made sure to research like which beans or brand goes through like third party testing for mold, and I like set him up with that because I was like, I feel better if you're taking this in, because otherwise you're just drinking a bunch of mold or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I probably don't pay that much attention to the mold thing.
Yeah.
But I know a lot of people like to talk about it for sure. So
Yeah.
anyway, Yeah. So,
Coffee's the thing.
what else? What else we got on board today? Here, what's next?
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk to psychiatrist, neuroscience, and Apollo Neuro co-founder, Dr. Dave Rabin. Welcome back to Longevity Junkie. Time for our guest interview. It's The Breakdown with Dr. Dave Rabin. Dr. Dave Rabin is a board-certified psychiatrist, neuroscientist, and leader in the field of mental health and human performance. He is the co-founder and chief innovation officer of Apollo Neuro, a wearable technology that uses vibration to help the body manage stress. Dr. Rabin has conducted pioneering research on the effects of chronic stress, trauma, and psychedelics. A respected voice in integrative psychiatry, he bridges cutting-edge science with practical tools to support emotional well-being and resilience. Welcome to the show, Dr. Rabin.
It's so nice to be here with you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, it's not every day we have a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist all in one on our show. I love that. How did you get into both of that?
There's not many of me out there.
No, not at all. Seriously.
Long story short, I was fascinated by dreams as a kid and really interested in just kind of why we had really intense dreams and why dreams sometimes felt like reality. And nobody could really answer that question for me in any field. Even my parents, who were doctors, just kind of told me the dreams aren't real. And I was like, that doesn't really satisfy me because they feel real.
Yeah.
And so I was like, well, this is interesting. Maybe there's some, unknown things about reality that need to be investigated further. And I was really young. I was just started around maybe, I don't know, like 4, 5, 6. And then I kept having these, intense dreams as I grew up, but less often, and started to read sci-fi and get interested in psychology and consciousness in high school. And then I ended up doing a PhD in neuroscience. As I started doing neuroscience research in the lab, actually before my PhD, I was, really enjoying lab and bench research, but I realized that I really liked working with whole people and solving whole people's problems, which in the lab, it takes sometimes decades to get, and, hundreds of millions of dollars to get discoveries from the lab into the real world in the clinic. And I realized that I just really wanted to work with people and solve hard problems that people have. And we don't do that often in the lab alone. The lab is like a part of a much bigger whole. And so I became fascinated by mental health and some of the harder to treat disorders in mental health, and went into psychiatry and addictions and found psychedelic research and technology, and well, the rest is history.
Oh my God, I love that. Did you find anything out about dreams? Has there been a connection with your consciousness or anything that you've discovered with your research?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think we've learned quite a bit over the last few decades. I think one of the things that was really interesting that got me fascinated by psychedelic research is that what the word psychedelic means that we don't talk about that much, is a term coined by Aldous Huxley and Humphrey Osmond back in the 1950s. And what it really means is psyche means mind, and delos means to show or to reveal. And we access psychedelic states of mind, meaning looking beneath the surface of our awareness all the time. And dreams are actually one of the most basic ways that we all experience as humans psychedelic states, and you don't need drugs to get there. And so as I started to explore psychedelics and the way that psychedelic medicines are used in therapy to help people heal from trauma that's stored in our subconscious for sometimes decades, what I realized was that the administration of psychedelics to people in therapy is like activating a waking lucid dream state that you can interact in. And so we're actually now learning a lot about dreams and what happens when we dream and why we dream, and that content that comes up in our subconscious and our unconscious material from the studies of psychedelic medicines. And so it's all coming full circle.
Oh my God. I'm very intrigued about psychedelic therapy for sure. Would you say this is kind of similar, or is it different than like ketamine treatment?
Ketamine is definitely a psychedelic. So
Okay. Oh, it is. Okay. Great to know.
So ketamine is the only legal psychedelic medicine that's federally legal that we as licensed doctors have access to right now.
Oh,
So
that's good to know.
you have to experience it at a high enough dose to get to the psychedelic state. But
Mm-hmm.
once you do, it's fully psychedelic. And in a lot of ways, I think many people who have experienced more potent psychedelics, like, or what's thought of as more potent or traditional, like ayahuasca or LSD, will tell you that the experience with ketamine at the right dose is comparable to what experience people have confronting the divine or God or themselves as they experience with ayahuasca, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, I did. We have an episode actually of me on ayahuasca, basically. Like I'm in the
Oh,
middle
wow.
of my like 4-day ayahuasca retreat, and I came. Yeah, and we did like a live from this, from this experience. It was pretty crazy. But okay, so when I think of mental health and like psychiatry and stuff, I always go to like PTSD. Like I feel like there's so many people with PTSD, and that's why a lot of people go to therapy and things like that. Um, and I guess you frequently saw, from what I read, you frequently saw like a nervous system being stuck in survival mode with PTSD patients. This is really like fascinating to me. Can you share a case or a moment when this realization really hit home of the nervous system being stuck?
Oh, sure. And this is not something that I discovered, by the way. This is an idea of
Uh-huh.
trauma that has been around for a very long time. Um, I believe it actually might date back to Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, who described people who are struggling with any mental illness, not just PTSD, as being stuck in a certain state of mind. And that idea of stuckness was something that always was challenging because we're trying to, as psychiatrists and therapists, evoke change and transformation. But if you're stuck in a previous way of being and seeing yourself, then envisioning yourself as something different and changing or transforming can be really hard, right? And so the question was more about, are people stuck and is that a thing? I think we've seen that for a long time. The question more what came down to, well, what is keeping people stuck? And when you start to look at what keeps people stuck in a certain state of being, like, for example, I just had a fascinating patient today who had struggled with being stuck in a state of feeling like she didn't matter. And she, when we asked her, well, when do you first remember feeling that way? And she immediately remembered an experience from when she was 1 year old and her parents ignored her and neglected her when she was in need. And she immediately remembered at that moment being like, remembered this feeling of not mattering. And if she didn't matter to her parents, then how could she matter to herself or anyone else? And she lived her entire life not mattering. And so you think about, is she stuck in a 1 year old state? Not exactly, but she is stuck in a state that might have started with an idea or a concept of not mattering at one that then stayed with her for her whole life. And then starts leading her life from a perspective of, I don't matter. So if I don't matter, why should I do XYZ for myself? Right? Why shouldn't I just keep doing everything that makes everyone else happy?
How do you break through that?
Well, there's a bunch of different ways to do it. Um, but a lot of it comes down to these sort of core practices of just, well, simply put, talk therapy, right? That's kind of like the way we've done it traditionally that works. And it can take a very long time, but it certainly works. And there's different kinds of talk therapy, all different kinds. Some of them work better than others. The technique that we like to use in some of these cases is a trauma focused approach, because when you experience, and I don't know if you know Gabor Mate's work, he talks about this a lot, um, where children are neglected by their parents, and so they develop these concepts of self perceptions of, I don't matter, or there's something wrong with me because my parents didn't treat me well when I was
Mm.
growing up or didn't pay attention to me. And then you have to reprogram that and help people understand that, because the perspective of their parents at the time, they were probably just really stressed out new parents. And then, you know, Did you actually do anything wrong that resulted in you not mattering? No, you were one, like you couldn't have done anything wrong, right? Or you were in sixth grade, like you were just doing the best you could. You can't necessarily know like that, what to do that's right. You're just doing whatever you think you're supposed to be doing. And so it's this process of kind of like reevaluating the fault or the blame that we place on ourselves, and then the shame that comes from that self-blame process, and then helping people, which creates a fear response in the body. So to go back to your original question, this disruption in the autonomic nervous system, which governs our stress response and healing, gets messed up by us feeling like there's something wrong with us or we don't matter. Then our stress response gets triggered, because if I don't matter or there's something wrong with me, then maybe I don't feel safe in my own body, right? Like I don't feel like I can take care of myself and I can keep myself safe. And our body builds up this stress response because we feel like we're in danger all the time, even just by being ourselves. And so the healing process is actually, if you think about what is the opposite of fear, the opposite of fear is safety. And so if trauma is learned fear, then healing is learned safety. And so the simple reductionist approach to healing is we work with people to relearn how to feel safe in your own skin. And then there's tons of different things that help with that, including, somatic therapy, touch therapy, Apollo, vagal nerve stimulators, psychotherapy, eye-to-eye contact, all these different kinds of things.
So you've got some research that digs into, I guess, has been referred to as epigenetics of trauma response and psychedelics. Can you, first of all, maybe if you want to, the word epigenetics is a tricky one, and especially trying to understand exactly what the meaning of that is in your context. So tell us a little bit about what that research is about and what you're finding.
Well, so the research is about how we heal from trauma, because we have never had biological markers or biomarkers for mental illness that are reliable. And it's been one of the things our field has been working on, the field of psychiatry has been working on for many, many decades. And now in the 21st century, we're finally starting to develop objective, reliable biomarkers for mental illness that predict your chances of developing mental illness, your chances of recovering from mental illness, and with what technique, and also how recovered you are. Markers that showing that you've healed or you're on the path to healing. Epigenetics is a word that really means on the DNA. Genetic means in the DNA. So DNA, just to give a brief primer, DNA is composed of 4 letters, A, C, T, and G, that are nucleotides that compose every single cell in our body and make up all of our DNA code. And every single cell in our bodies has the same DNA code except our sperm and egg cells, which is really interesting, right? And yet, your skin knows to be skin, and your brain knows to be brain, and your eye knows to be eye, but they all have the same code. So how do they know to be different cell types if they're all coded the same way? Well, the reason why they know is because there's another layer of code on top of the DNA called epigenetic code. And that code tells the DNA, in your skin, turn up skin, turn down brain. In your brain, turn up brain, turn down skin, etc. And so that's how all of our body cells differentiate into all of the millions of different cell types that we have, is because of that epigenetic code. What was discovered in the 1980s and 90s that was new, and this was discovered primarily by Dr. Rachel Yehuda at Yale and Sinai, is that stress and trauma experiences can also be stored in our epigenetic code, particularly on different genes like cortisol receptor genes, which cortisol is a major stress response protein and governs a lot of the way our bodies handle stress. And people who have PTSD in particular have certain epigenetic changes that you can measure on one of their cortisol receptors. And this was never known before. So this discovery was very, very important. Because it helped us to understand that there are certain markers on the code that track that you have had traumatic experiences before, and that those experiences have not only been stored in your body, hence the body keeps the score, but
Best book ever.
it's great book, right?
That's
Very
a great book.
poignant and very game changing for the field. And also the fact that those memories, those traumatic memories that are stored in our epigenetic code, thought you could think of it as like epigenetic memory, actually have an impact on us in the way that our cortisol receptor system works. So this is kind of the nature of epigenetic regulation. And it's the interesting part is it's changing all the time. So when you experience stress or you experience tasting a delicious food you like or any number of other things, our bodies are recording that memory, not just in our neurons in our brains, but also in our epigenetic code, all the way through the entire body to the cell inside of the cell. And so what we demonstrated for the first time was we wanted to understand how psychedelic medicines were working, because psychedelic medicines, both historically in the traditional ayahuasca setting and in the modern setting with MDMA-assisted therapy, are arguably the greatest, most effective treatments for PTSD that we've ever had. So if people with PTSD have epigenetic cortisol changes, then when over 50% of those people are better 1 year out after experiencing just 3 doses of MDMA and 12 weeks of therapy, you should be able to measure it on the epigenetic code. And so we did that study, and we found that, in fact, we actually do see that people who respond to MDMA have these very significant shifts in their cortisol receptor epigenetic code that is like changing the receptor code more back to the way it was when it was functioning normally. So it shows that not only does trauma cause these changes to the code and to the function of the cortisol receptor, but that by doing the healing process in the correct way, you can reverse it or start to repair it. And that was never known before. So we're starting to show that healing from trauma psychologically and clinically also has effects on reversing the traumatic memories stored in the body, which is really cool. And it's really exciting for the field and for all the PTSD sufferers out there.
Yeah, interesting. So psychedelics in generally considered sort of non-specific amplifiers of awareness. So how does that concept influence how you structure a therapeutic session, from mindset preparation to the integration afterward?
That's a great question. That term non-specific amplifier of awareness was coined by Dr. Stan Grof, who was one of the first psychiatrists and physicians to receive LSD from Albert Hofmann in the 1950s. And so this means that when you increase awareness with a psychedelic medicine, for instance, it increases awareness of everything underneath the surface, not just good stuff and not just bad stuff, but everything in between. And so you want to be highly intentional with how we use psychedelic medicines, the setting being the mindset you come into it with, how prepared you are, what your goal is or your intention and what you want to get out of it, which is the preparatory work we do in advance. And then the integration that you mentioned is what you do after to unpack everything you've learned from that experience and then integrate it into your life. And so we, in our clinical practice, and that of my colleagues, we focus on preparing someone very carefully for what they're going to experience and what they want to experience as a goal in their psychedelic medicine work. And then afterwards, in the integration session, we unpack all of that, we talk about it, and we help to figure out what it was that you experienced and how does that connect to how you see yourself, how you saw yourself, what your goals were before you went in, and sort of how to think about living your life differently as a result of that experience that you had. And then you rinse and repeat.
So I'm assuming you're not a big fan of these sort of at-home ketamine vendors that are out there right now. You can go basically online and sign up, and they'll send you a bunch of ketamine, and you do it at home.
I mean, they're not all bad. I think when they start to become risky is when there's no therapy guidance, right? Because taking a psychedelic without proper guidance and preparation can increase awareness of anything, right? So in my practice, I would say about 50% of my patients are people who have accidentally traumatized themselves using psychedelics the wrong way or by working with an
Oh, wow.
untrained provider.
Wow.
And just help. And there's
That's
very few
horrible.
people like me who actually dive back in with you and help you recover from those states, and integrate those challenging experiences, or what many people call bad trips. Um, but there are lots of at-home ways to deliver therapy where we can prepare you adequately in advance, and we can do integration over Zoom and help you get access to psychedelic medicine in the comfort of your home, like ketamine, which is the only medicine that's delivered this way. But we can give you clinical grade medicine from a pharmacy like ketamine, and you can have guided experiences at home that are very thoughtful and intentional, and not just like, here is a bunch of medicine, just take it and tell us what happened, right? So I think there's a big spectrum of quality. I would say the at-home experiences, properly guided, are better than going to an anesthesiologist and just getting an infusion of ketamine and getting zero therapy in a doctor's office. You're still getting zero therapy, right? So the key is, wherever you're doing it, however you're doing it, have therapists present in your life, in connection, that you have a comfortable relationship with, that can help guide and shape your experience so that you can get the most out of it and reduce risk as much as possible.
Yeah, I feel like that's very important. And you are actually known for organizing one of the largest controlled psychedelic studies like ever, correct?
I am working with a large group. There's a little bit of a misconception. I am working with a large group of people who are working to expand our epigenetic study that I mentioned earlier, that showed that you can reverse the trauma memory stored on the epigenetic code with MDMA, to bring together anyone who's doing psychedelic research in the world to contribute data into this study. So that's kind of the large study. It's still small, but it's significant, and so we're bringing in and recruiting more researchers and participants to contribute. But it is a very large study, and it's very exciting to be part of it.
Well, in this study, like there's, lots of moments, I'm sure, from, starting it up and building that to breakthroughs. Can you reveal to us something that shared the fundamentals of human healing?
I think the the fundamentals come back to, and again, there's still a lot to be learned from this work. We're just at the earliest phases. Like, to give you an idea, we have just shown, this is as of, like, I believe 2022, when our first paper came out, that trauma is in fact biologically reversible and repairable on the epigenetic level. So that was the first major paper. That is a huge step for our field. We never knew that was possible before in Western science. Um, I think what we're going to find, that the evidence is starting to point to, but again, there's still a lot of work to be done, is that safety, like the sense of safety, meaning that you feel safe in your own skin and you can identify that you don't have any physical threats around you, you have enough air, you have enough food, you have enough water, there's no predators around, that you are, for all intents and purposes, in this moment, safe, even though you might be stressed out and overwhelmed at the same time, that you are safe, that is a direct trigger to the healing nervous system, which we call the vagus nerve system. And so the vagus nerve, which is the primary nerve of the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system, which also is critically important for longevity and health span, just to tie it all together. If the more activity we have in that vagus nerve system, the longer, healthier lives we live. And that's why HRV, heart rate variability, is such an important biomarker of longevity. And so safety triggers vagus nerve activity to go up. When vagus nerve activity goes up, that sends a signal to many parts of our brains, particularly the amygdala, which is the fear center of our brain, and it tells that part, hey, you're safe enough to start the recovery and healing process. You're safe enough to sleep and get deep, restful sleep, which is one of the most important parts of the healing process. And once that starts to happen, and we start training ourselves to remind ourselves that we're safe and not under active survival threat, then the body starts to heal itself on its own. And that was known and has been known for thousands of years by the forefathers of Western medicine, Hippocrates, Maimonides, and the founders of Eastern and tribal medicine. They've been practicing this way for thousands of years. So, again, this is just new to us in Western science. It's not new, generally speaking. Western science is just catching up because now we have the ability to measure some of this stuff in a way we didn't have before. So I think what we're really starting to find out that's exciting is safety. It is the importance of safety in the healing process. And the other exciting part is that we can all remind ourselves and each other that we're safe at any time by smiling at a stranger walking down the street, making eye contact with somebody, direct eye contact, right? Like empathizing with somebody, demonstrating understanding, listening to somebody non-judgmentally when they're having a hard time, like giving somebody a hug. All of those kinds of experiences boost vagus nerve activity and increase the healing and recovery responses in the body naturally. No medicine required, no surgery required, right? So I think like that's the most exciting stuff that we're learning that's starting to really make a scalable impact on how we heal from trauma and especially other mental illnesses in the world.
Well, and staying on the vein of signaling safety, uh, in your work, I was reading that you're able to signal safety to the brain through breath work and self-touch, music, psychedelics, like we've mentioned, and also wearables like the Apollo. Yeah, exactly. And I'm wondering, like, how can you, in your professional opinion, sequence these or layer these tools for the maximum impact?
That's an interesting question as well. So I think that we can layer them indefinitely, infinitely. I think some people need more layering because their bodies have been trained to be in a fear state for longer than other people's bodies. And so if you've had a lot of hardship, a lot of trauma in your life, you might need to stack more safety tools. You might need to use your Apollo and breathe with meditation music on while getting a hug from your dog, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like there's all these different things that you can do. And other people need safety from two therapists where they've built a close, trusting relationship with the augmentation of a psychedelic medicine that as a amplifier of awareness, when you bring safety into the experience, your psychedelic medicine amplifies that safety, neurochemically speaking, right? So there's these different levels and layers. But I think in general, most people just need a little bit more of it all the time. And so that was part of why we developed Apollo, was because in my work, we saw the healing power of touch. And soothing touch is actually one of the fastest single ways to activate the safety system in the human brain. And we know that anybody who's had kids, I have my first newborn right now, and I can tell you that nothing helps him stop crying than coming in contact with us. And nothing soothes him better than that. And nothing soothes us better than that when we were being cared for by our parents. And so it's the same with most mammals. In fact, it's not just humans. It's almost all mammals have close physical contact when they're first born to help non-verbally convey safety almost instantaneously. And so, I think to answer your question simply, in general, the more that we do things that remind us that we're safe, even one of those many things, the better. At times where we have the opportunity to stack them and do multiple at one time, you'll feel the difference and it's even better. But it's not always necessary to have many of them at the same time. I think the most important thing is just to have safety more often. And if we got, 8 to 12 minutes of hugs a day instead of like 0 to
Hmm.
30 seconds of hugs a day, we would all feel a heck of a lot better.
Yeah, very
So,
true.
so let's talk a little bit about the device. So the Apollo device, it's got some really interesting studies. There's a Pittsburgh study, at basically showed that it boosted cognitive performance under stress by up to 25%, increased heart rate variability within 3 minutes. Tell us how this thing works. What is it? Are you manufacturing hugs?
A little bit. I mean,
Kinda.
yeah. So the story really comes from my work with doing research into MDMA therapy, where back in 2016, when I first met Rick Doblin, who's the founder of MAPS, who that's the organization that he founded that's run all the MDMA trials over the last 40 years, I was really fascinated by the results that they were getting with MDMA. And so, to give you an idea, MDMA is like, when used properly in psychotherapy for PTSD, it's like an antibiotic level effect for people suffering from PTSD, where just 3 doses in 12 weeks of psychotherapy result in, over a year later, over 50% of people are in remission with no additional treatment. I mean, it's absolutely astounding. And it's like nothing else we've seen in the history of mental health. So I went to Rick and I was like, Rick, we got to figure out how this works so that we can create other tools that tap into the same neural pathway that don't require MDMA, and at the same time help to explain how MDMA is working, to destigmatize it as this drug of abuse or whatever, that the story that's been told for so long. And he came around and got me trained, and a few of my colleagues trained in MDMA therapy. And then I realized during the training which is a beautiful experience, the way MDMA is taught in the training and the way that our regular old psychotherapy is taught in our regular old Western psychotherapy training is that safety is the most important part of therapy. If you don't trust your therapist, you're not going to tell them about what's going on in your life, right? So you're not going to make progress in treatment if your therapist doesn't know what's going on with you. That's the whole point of therapy. And it's no different with MDMA. But with MDMA, it works by molecularly amplifying safety cascades in the emotional brain, so that in just 3 sessions with a bunch of therapy surrounding it, you as a participant feel safe enough to remake meaning around past traumatic events, right? So think about that. Like, you literally have a medicine that augments your sense of self and your safety pathways enough that you feel safe enough to go back and reevaluate past traumatic experiences and remake meaning from them. And it all comes back to just boosting safety cascades in your nervous system. So I saw this theme of safety coming out in every part of my life. And I was like, this is fascinating. Like, we need to like pull the threads on this. So I went back to the lab, and thinking about touch as the most powerful way to feel safe in our day-to-day lives, doesn't require drugs. It activates all the same neural pathways of safety that MDMA does. And so I started evaluating touch and how touch does that. How does touch get from your skin to your brain to induce these states of profound safety and calm? And as I started to look at that, I realized, hey, this is actually activating the same neural pathways as MDMA. So then I thought, well, if touch can do that, then what if we delivered touch from technology in a soothing way? What if it's a frequency thing, right? And we know music has this effect. Music we like stimulates the same part of the brain. You've had the experience where you've been having a bad day and you walk into a room or into your car, you turn the radio on, and one of your favorite songs pops on the radio and you instantly feel better, right? It's like a universal human experience. So, and you forget you're having a bad day. You're just like instantly feel better. So same like getting a hug on a bad day from somebody you like. But if you get a hug from somebody on a bad day that you don't like, you feel worse. So I thought, well, what if we take the personality out of the hug, and we just give you the vibrational rhythm of the hug to your touch receptors, and see if your body starts to respond in the way that it responds to getting hugged by somebody you like or snuggling a pet. And so we did a bunch of double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trials on people in the lab at the University of Pittsburgh, and then on healthy people, and then on people who were sick and suffering from illness. And when we looked at their bodies using EKG machines, brainwave EEG machines, respiratory monitors, pupillometry monitors, cognitive performance monitors, you name it, all different kinds of assessment tools that you can use in a university lab, we found that there were very specific rhythms of vibration that are similar to an ocean wave, or similar to chanting Om, or similar to the feeling of a cat purring on your body that reliably increase vagus nerve activity. And just like getting a hug. And when you increase vagus nerve activity just a little bit, people feel safer in their own skin, and they start to report that their symptoms of mental illness start to decrease, and their cognitive performance and focus go up, and this is measured by heart rate variability. So that's kind of how we discovered it, and then we released it. We started using it ourselves because we had to test the prototypes in before we released it to the public and make sure it worked in the real world and not just in the lab. And it had profound impact on our lives. And we did not have a diagnosis. My wife and I started the company together. We weren't diagnosed with any mental illness, but we were stressed. And I was working full time as a doctor and researcher. I was very stressed and busy. And wearing this little thing on me, this little vibrating device, changed everything. Like, it changed my energy, it improved my sleep, it improved my focus, it improved my ability to deliver presentations. I mean, it just had universal benefit for me. And we realized in that moment, same for my wife, especially for sleep, we realized in those moments of using it that we had to make this a consumer product for the world. And so we released it to the general public in 2020 as a wearable, like what you see on my chest now, that just lives on a clip or a strap. You can wear it anywhere on your body. And it just vibrates at very gentle vibrations that you can barely feel, you can't hear at all, that are sound waves that feel like Om, or they feel like a cat purring, or they feel like a gentle ocean wave washing over you. And when your body feels that, it does something really interesting, which is called bottom-up learning. Your body learns to feel safe by recognizing the soothing rhythm. And then when your body recognizes the soothing rhythm, your brain gets reminded that it's safe, your vagus nerve activity goes up, and all of a sudden, you feel better, you can focus better, you can make better decisions, and generally you're more present in your day-to-day life. You're kind of like in a flow state more of the time. And so that's kind of how we got there. But anybody who wants to try it, we now have these vibrations available for free as a free experience on the iPhone. So if you have an iPhone, you can just download the Apollo app and you can experience it for yourself and feel the Apollo vibes that we're talking about.
It's funny. I've actually, a friend of mine was aware of you and aware of Apollo, and because he was aware of it, it became a little bit of a thing where I would find a hug in the hug vibration in the app, and I would send it, and you can send a hug. And that was kind of cool. I actually really enjoyed that. And sometimes I would just log onto the hug on the phone and just like put it on my chest and just be like, okay, that feels nice. But however, I want to bring up that I did the whole doing a scheduled out day of, like, okay, if you're going to work out at this time, it will give you a different vibration here, there, and the other. And I wore it to bed. And I'm going to tell you, when I was laying in bed and it would go off, I don't know if it amped me up a little bit or what, but it didn't soothe me in the sense of like putting me to sleep. It kind of amped me up a little. And I wanted to ask you about that personally, because I would love something to knock me out faster,
Yeah.
and I didn't know if the vibes were supposed to do that specifically or what, but I just got a little bit more energy. So I wanted to ask you about that.
You probably had the intensity turned up a little too high.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A lot of people
That's
think
me.
that more is more.
Yeah.
And
More is
that's like,
better. It's not.
yeah, it's definitely not. That's like
Yeah, no, it's distracting.
it's so the American way. The
Okay.
more is better. But in fact, same with most drugs, believe it or not, is that less is more. And so with Apollo, especially when you're going to sleep, but generally speaking, you want the vibrations to be just barely noticeable to you. So that they kind of fade into the background every time. And usually within a couple minutes, they should fade into the background. And if they are noticeable and distracting, then you want to turn them down. If they're distracting, then they can give you energy when you don't desire energy. So we try to give intensity guidance in the app to just let people know, like, hey, this should be like just barely noticeable or fade into the background. But a lot of people turn it up anyway. It's no fault of yours. It's just a thing that we all do. So I think I would try it again with just turning the intensity down lower, because you might be one of those people who's really sensitive to vibration and touch. And when you're falling asleep, the intensity can be really low, like 30%, 20%, 10%, just where you barely notice it. And then you will start to notice that your energy in your body will just gradually start to come down, and it'll drop you into sleep more quickly. And then it'll turn on an even more gentle vibration if you have the AI in the middle of the night when it's detecting that you're waking up, and it'll prevent you from waking up in the middle of the night, which is the best feature.
Yeah, I feel like most people, always wake up in the middle of the night. I'm pretty good, I will say, at staying asleep, so that's great. Once I'm out,
That's good.
I'm out. Yeah. But I was wondering too, is there a place to put it? I know you said anywhere on the body, but I tried it on the wrist, I tried it on the ankle. I did like put it on my chest, and I'm just wondering if there's something that might be a little better for, I don't know, activity, or better for sleep or something like that.
Yeah, it's really personal preference. Sleep is definitely the best on the ankle. It's kind of
Okay,
like
I
away
could do
from
that.
your head, and you
Yeah.
can feel it through your whole body.
Hmm.
And it's more gentle. So
Okay.
I typically, and that's my favorite spot to wear it. I would say that we have the best results with sleep, on the order of like 30 to 60 minutes more sleep a night with people wearing it on the ankle. And that's like hands down the best spot for sleep. Daytime doesn't really matter that much. If you're typing at a computer, you probably don't want to wear something on your wrist. Maybe you do. I don't like that. I like to wear it on my chest during the day. And I would say the most popular spot in general, and particularly for sleep, is the ankle. Chest and wrist tend to be more popular during the day. But then you can clip it on your belt. A lot of women clip it on their bra or a strap. Um, you can wear it. You can literally wear it anywhere. You can play around with it.
Yeah, that's good. Well, I mean, okay, so you've built a tool that signals safety, which I do appreciate. Because you can, like, especially being at home by myself, I don't always have someone to like hug me or something like that. So that's really nice. You're
Yeah, we need
pioneering.
snuggles.
Yeah, I know. I love snuggles. You're pioneered psychedelic integration, and you work with epigenetics. Like, what's next with you? What's a vision or a project that you haven't told anyone yet that you're working on?
Good question. I think the most exciting thing that we're working on, is that I've just started to talk about, is this concept of going from our current standard of care in mental health, which is you go to the doctor because you're not feeling good, or your therapist, and you say, "Hey, I'm not feeling good." You fill out a survey, and then they hand you a prescription, right? That's pretty much the way it works anywhere you go for mental health care in the US today. Where we need to go from there is, we need to go to a place where mental illnesses become something that's curable. And to cure mental illness, we have to understand how it's working, and we have to understand what's happening in the body at the core. Like, where are the systems messed up? And so I think what's really exciting that we can all hope for in the future is, rather than like what we have now is a reactive model. We don't do anything for you until you get sick. And then once you get sick, we give you pills and a diagnosis, and we're
Yeah.
like, good luck for life. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no cure. And we're taught to tell you there's no cure. And we taught to tell you, keep taking your medicine or you will relapse most of the time. It's quite discouraging for people, and it makes us feel worse about ourselves. That's not what healing's about. Healing's about transformation. It's about recovery. It's about self-discovery. And it always has been, but we kind of like lost that in Western medicine. The culmination of all the research with technology, with psychedelics, where this is going is that if we can identify the systems, like the stress response system that's dysfunctional in trauma, in depression, in anxiety disorders, then we can start to hit that nervous system rather than numbing you with drugs for life. We're saying, okay, let's fix what's going on in your nervous system. Let's help you feel safe again. And if we can help you feel safe again, and then look at the biomarkers of safety as you progress through treatment, then we can transform a prescription for medicine for life and a diagnosis to, okay, here you're coming now, you come into your office, could be like 5, 10 years from now, probably 10, but you come into your doctor's office, you do the same normal screening, but you also submit like a urine or a blood sample or a saliva sample. They run your epigenetic code, and then they hand you a prescription to remission. right? Just like with antibiotics. With antibiotics, they say, take this pill for 7 days and do your aftercare plan and don't reinfect the wound site, and you'll be, 90% chance you will no longer be infected after 7 days, right? And that is what we're getting to with mental health. And I think that within 10 years, we should start to see through technology and through psychedelics and through the combination with therapy and epigenetic analysis, biomarker analysis, we should actually start to be able to see curable mental illness. And when you think about the impact that antibiotics had to human health and lifespan, from that simple discovery, hand washing through that simple discovery, I mean, these discoveries extended human life and quality of life by like 10 to 30 years. So you think about like, what are the most impactful things that we can do to extend human life? It's develop cures for mental illness. And if we can do that, then we could potentially get another 10 to 30 years of high quality living onto all of our lives. And what could be better than that? It's like we just need to focus all on the right stuff. It's going to inner space, not outer space.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for being on the show. The device again is called the Apollo Neuro, and
Yes.
definitely worth checking out. Thank you so much again for being on.
Of course, it's my pleasure. So yeah, thank
I
you so
love
much for
that.
having me.
Oh, it was our pleasure. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back with our healthy takeout. Welcome back to Longevity Junkie. It's time for our healthy takeout. All right. Well, I feel kind of validated about needing safety.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? At the end of the day, we're like these animals that, that
Yeah.
need to, that we're, we need to feel like we get food that we.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, because that having that safety, that foundation of safety really does allow you to enter different tasks or enter different, situations in life with not all the stress built up behind. So you can actually, I feel, be more clear-minded and show up, at your best to handle or tackle whatever situation is happening. And I also was appreciative of him saying that there are, different ways to allow that safety to happen, which is basically the calming of the nervous system, whether it be even whether it be psychedelics or whether it be the wearables like the Apollo or self-touch or breath work or just soothing.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that to me, that because there's also like research on it, was just validating, because that's been something I've realized, that feeling safe is one of my biggest things that I wasn't feeling most of my life.
Yeah. I think that one of the other things that this episode, I think, highlights is that there is some effort in the psychiatry world, again, to sort of quantify these diseases. I know Dr. Amen had, had made a big point to mention that, like, psychiatric care in the past has never really, we're not really looking at images, things like that, where you ought to do. And this time we're talking about potentially looking at laboratory studies that are gauging these, what he calls the epigenetic changes in this case, that to essentially track, the amount of stress hormones or the expression of stress hormones. I think that's all really important. And then the last thing I just think is really was something I'd like to hear. Something that I do like to hear is this idea of, can we actually cure something like this? I mean, can we actually cure psychiatric illness? I mean, all we do for the most part, unfortunately, is we try to manage it, and we prescribe medications and stuff.
Mhm.
But I do like his concept of curing disease. The one other thing I'll just point out with the Apollo, I think there's probably something to it. I tried it too, but I don't think I was doing it right. I don't think it really, for me, I just couldn't figure out what was going on. How about you?
I mean, I felt like it was really nice. Like, I really did go through these different modes, and I tried it on my wrist. I tried it on my ankle. I tried it, before I worked out. I tried it. I wore it like for, consecutive days. And
Did you measure your HRV in response to it at all? That's something I didn't do.
well, actually, I did not, but I did. You were able to connect your Aura ring. So, I feel like I want to go back knowing a little bit more about all that. I want to kind of see, okay, if I'm going to use this today, um, then I want to look at, what my Aura ring says as well. But what I did find, like sweet about it, actually, it really, when you put it on like your chest, and there's different frequencies of, like, there's literally a hug frequency vibration that, like, I was sending out, to people, and it's like you put it on your chest, and it is really beautiful and calming if you're focusing on that, in my opinion. I didn't feel like just having it throughout the day was, because it wasn't as intentional. I didn't feel like it had as much effect as much as it was, oh, okay, I'm gonna really be in this right now and allow it to calm my nervous system. I think it probably is helpful for people who never maybe get that, but I need to be a little bit more focused and intentional. So when that's happening and I focused on it, I did feel a sense of calming. I did feel that.
Yeah.
But again, just had to be more in the vein of, okay, this is what I'm doing for a moment. Let's take that break. Right.
Yeah. It doesn't surprise me. For me personally, I'm so dense. None of these things seem to do anything to me. So I think there's probably a lot of people who can benefit. Check it out. I think there's like a trial period too. So if it doesn't work for you.
Well, there's also some free ones too, like free. The app and everything goes really in depth of, can be scheduled all day or whatever. But there are some things that are free that you could just try out. And like, especially if you have an iPhone, like you said, just like you can choose a sort of whatever your intention is with that vibration or however that frequency lines up.
Does it just vibrate from your phone?
And it just, and it just vibrates at whatever that, frequency is. And I just like to put it on my chest and just kind of like feel that calming. But that's because, I don't know, I just feel, again, intention is a lot of it, because if we're so in our head and busy, it's probably helping, but I don't feel like it processes that much of an assistance to calm down when you're already still in your head,
Yeah.
But again, who knows? But
interesting stuff. We obviously revisited the whole ketamine and things that we talked about before. I mean, these are things that are definitely making a big impact in
psychedelics are huge. They really do allow you to rewire through trauma. And I loved being able to go back to that, like that these psychedelics allow you to go back and not relive the trauma, but like have the outcome of the effect be recalibrated and rewired in your body, which I thought, I was like, wow, that's lovely. That's where a lot of our stress and trauma and our, health, all the health bad things that go on with health has that as the foundation, and we've just kind of stacked on and compounded that. So it was nice to see that we could rewire that. So yeah, that was great. I liked it.
Can you read us out?
Yes, I do. Longevity Junkie is created by Dr. Buck Joffrey, MD. It's executive produced by myself, Nikki Leigh, Dr. Buck Joffrey, and Phil Ferragamo. We're distributed by our friends at Acast. See you next time.